good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, welcome, and thank you so very much for being here with us. As you may or may not know, I am Kim Sarafini, the founder, creator, and CEO of Positive Prime Technology, and we're here today, as we are every week, for a group healing, coaching, guidance class or session or appointment, whatever it is that you want to call it. What I thought I would do today is explain a little bit of the foundation. I often go into a quick tutorial of Positive Prime as a platform and how to use it or leverage it and get the most out of it. And also, I make myself available to listen to those of you who are here with respect to either a challenge or an issue, an opportunity that you have. So I'll explain a little. Over 20 years, I have been very much involved in what is classified as the wellness industry or the spa industry, health and well-being, beauty, and very much because I'm Australian, based in Australia, and I've run retreats in Bali. I lived in Bali actually for about a year, nearly 10 years ago, and it was based on some work that I'd been doing in the previous 10 years in Asia, the Middle East, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, etc. So to say that I have gone on a journey and become somebody who's a little bit more than a life coach, I've integrated the career that I had as a change management consultant into my new, study subjects, which are around positive psychology and neuroscience. That's what I've been very intensely focused on in the last 10 years. I combine all of that, and most people don't know this, but my surname Sarafini is actually part of a crystal called Seraphonite, Seraphinite. And the people who really believe in the energetic vibration of things and places believe that looking at Seraphonite is like looking at angels' wings that have been compressed into stone. And people who are very gifted with respect to crystal healing, they believe that somebody who holds a piece of Seraphonite channels or receives messages from the divine. Now, I've just been in Bali and I've picked up my necklace, and every one of the green beads is actually Seraphonite. So it's a very rare and precious crystal. And of course, I have a matching bracelet, and I have indeed a huge raw piece of Seraphonite. I think what is rare and unique is that I am a Sarafini, and there will be people who will tell you in ancient times that my name comes from the fact that we were like earth angels, here to guide people, to help heal people, and help them to reconnect to the divine and remember the divinity within. And so it's a little esoteric for a lot of people to cope with, but that's actually who I am. So if you come to Sarafini Mind Spa here in Australia, a lot of the treatments that you'll have, a lot of the experiences that you have, they'll be centered around the fact that there is such a thing as a Sarafini treatment, and I happen to be the only person in the world who has developed the skills and gifts and talents to be able to do this because of who I am. Now, what is most bizarre about this story is about it's nearly 3.5 years ago, I started having these incredibly interesting, let's call them episodes, where I'd go completely unconscious, and all the medical specialists in the modern world couldn't understand what was happening. I was actually going through what's called sinus arrests. That's the medical term, because I have a condition that is an autonomic nervous system disorder. They didn't know that. It took them over 18 months, and I had MRIs of the brain. I had cardiac MRIs. I had all sorts of other tests with all sorts of specialists, and they literally couldn't understand. They put it, what's called a loop recorder. They put a little chip, looked like a little USB stick, in my chest. They actually insert it with what looks like a nail gun if you're into handyman, DIY, and it hurts like that too. And you're totally awake. It's only local anesthetic. Anyway, that little device was monitoring everything that was going on with my heart. And what they determined was there's nothing wrong with my heart, nothing at all. Structurally, functionally, it's all perfect. I don't have coronary artery disease. I'm extremely healthy. I have perfect structures that operate perfectly, except the nerve that tells this particular, what would be called like a starter pilot light inside my heart that tells it to pump, somehow is failing to communicate. And so it's a nerve condition. Now, why is this important? Because, interestingly enough, my first episode was that I was driving a motor vehicle and I actually was completely unconscious in the car. No one knew, but we ended up finding out it's because my heart would stop completely, flatline. And after about 20 seconds, all sorts of other things would start to go wrong, because if you don't have the heart pumping blood, perfusion doesn't happen. And if perfusion doesn't happen, then quite frankly, you're in a whole heap of trouble, because then you have other organs dying. So I was susceptible to irreparable, irreversible kidney damage, for example, except for the fact that I have nothing wrong with my kidneys now. The question is why? And the answer is in who I am. The first unconscious episode where my heart had completely stopped and I was clinically dead was my first near-death experience. And I've had six that I'm aware of and that I can acknowledge and that I understand. In the reflecting and in the post-mortem, in the understanding and the analyzing and so forth, we remembered that I'd had one of these things nearly 15 years ago when I was actually in the Middle East working. It must have been one of these unconscious episodes. But what's fascinating is that to the Balinese, who are deeply connected to their cultural Hindu ways of being, I am a miracle woman. And if I was to still be in Bali, people would literally have a pilgrimage to me to be blessed by me. Because for them, somebody who dies and then miraculously awakens is beyond magical. I'll tell you the crazy thing is that I hardly ever am tempted to see a psychic, but I was just before I went to Bali. And this particular psychic said to me, Kim, you know that you can do what I do, but I know you refuse to because you don't want to be considered that kind of person. And it's not just that it challenges the faith-based education that I had. It wasn't because I went to a church school as a teenager. It's because I wasn't ready. Because it comes with a lot of responsibility, and I'm not sure that I want to ever be considered a charlatan. But the facts are, when I listen to people, I hear a story between the lines, and I have done now for the last couple of years. I started to actually receive this incredible gift where my intuition is so strong when I was living in Bali 10 years ago, and I was very confused by it. So I'm here to share that story with you, and maybe some other people will listen to this video. But I've come back and declared to myself, just having arrived home from Bali, and it's August 2022, that I am going to continue doing these Sarafini treatments. And this is a group situation where you get to ask me a question, and I will literally tell you what either my angels or your angels are giving me as guidance that's for you. It's the intuitive answer. And the fascinating thing that most people don't understand is I actually infuse into Positive Prime sessions this Sarafini energy, particularly for the energy that I actually am cultivating in order to create the positive prime sessions that I do. I believe that I was gifted with the downloads that have led to how it is that I actually created the formula for a positive prime session that has resulted in 10 years later, positive prime sessions being scientifically proven in a school of engineering at the University of Technology, Sydney. And so if the School of Engineering, which is a hardcore opposite kind of brain approach, if the School of Engineering's brain-computer interfaces division doing the research on positive prime can scientifically prove that it synchronizes brainwaves so that we're in a state of flow, if that can happen for a treatment that was esoteric in its nature, a positive prime session is really a treatment that you give yourself. It's almost like a mind massage, an emotional massage, or a spiritual massage. And I think that the better I explain that, the more people will actually see positive prime for what it is. So for every single session that you're watching, you are literally going through a wellness experience. You are being healed mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And that is scientific fact, even though it sounds very woo-woo. It can be both. And in this new era that we are moving into, we can be both spiritual and scientific. It's not mutually exclusive. We can't be just one or the other. All right, so who is ready to ask me a question? Something that you've been dealing with, and I can indicate to you which is the best positive prime session for you to actually watch and why you should personalize that session, and or anything else that you're interested in an answer from the divine, from the universe, or from this energetic field that is all of us and greater than all of us. Okay, Linda, very brave of you.
So you probably know this. For a couple of years, I've been creating my, what I call Mindset Matters Most business I finally came up with an analogy. I had pieces of a jigsaw puzzle and I knew they fit together, but I didn't have the picture of the box to show me what I was creating. And so I recently figured that out. And so I feel really, really good about that. So little by little, I have been offering my services, positive prime for sure, to people, and different ways of getting people in. So here's my question. When I personalize for me in my positive prime account, how do I personalize? I want success in this business. I want people to know who I am, to come to me, for me to serve them. What kind of images do I put in my personal prime account that denotes that signifies that? It's working with people over Zoom. I'm using an app called Marco Polo where they talk to me by video and then I respond to them by video. We don't have to be at the same time. I just can't figure out what kind of images to put in that would represent success in serving that. Does that make sense? I mean,
Makes perfect sense, Linda.
Okay.
Perfect sense. Okay, so the answer is actually going to serve everybody. In a meditation or in a prayer or in a reflection, or maybe you can even go online and see if you can get yourself some Sarafini, a crystal. I'm pretty sure that there are places that you'll be able to find, maybe not a beautiful big piece like this, but maybe a small piece. You want to ask your higher self, what will I experience when I am successful? Now, there are lots of great gurus and self-help personalities and influencers who have said something similar to this, so I'm not the only one. You have to define for yourself what success means to you and looks like to you. And the only person you have to satisfy is yourself, nobody else. And so if success does actually mean that you have more money, I would argue that you don't want money. You want what you think money is going to do for you and or for your loved ones. Now I'll give you the next example. Let's just say that if I had enough money from being successful, what would I spend it on? And the truth is that I might, for example, buy my mother or father a new car. I might want to be generous in that kind of way. So what kind of personal images would I put into Positive Prime? I would find a photograph from a website of a car that I know that they would love. I don't need to do the Ferrari or the Porsche or the Range Rover or the whatever, right? It doesn't need to be ridiculous. The interesting thing about manifestation and about getting what it is that we want and need in life is that most of us actually, we put it out there with representation that we can't actually epistemically access. I'll give you an example. I have beliefs inside of me that would contradict my other than consciousness helping me to be successful if I had an image of a Ferrari. I've actually driven in a friend's Ferrari. It was uncomfortable. You feel every single bump. Now that's because they're supposed to be driven on exquisite racetracks, not on bumpy Australian roads. So I have competing, what you might refer to as limiting beliefs to the Ferrari. But let's just say it's an average car for an average family in Australia. Now that my energy can attach to in a healthy, sensible way, right? That's not to say that you shouldn't dream big and that possibilities are endless and, your potential is, quite frankly, infinite. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to be able to advance in ways that feel natural and organic and supporting of who you really are. Because the truth is, in order for you to be successful enough to have enough money for you to buy somebody else a Ferrari, you would probably have to work so hard. And the truth is, you're not willing to, and you won't work that hard for that long. You won't sacrifice enough for you to actually have more than enough money so that you can actually buy a Ferrari for someone else. And so the crazy thing is that we're led to believe in motivational circles that you need to be unreasonable about what it is that you want and need and desire. And that's how you extract more from yourself, and you have to get out of your comfort zone. But we're human and we don't like being outside of our comfort zone. And so the images that you upload need to be images that you actually think that one day you could really and truly experience that. Now, you might have a photograph of a holiday you want to go on, whether that's a cruise or it's a destination like you want to see the pyramids. Go find photographs of the pyramids. Because the divine will give you the resources, the solutions, the people, the circumstances, and everything else you need that will get you to the pyramids. There's also the fact that you're in this physical plane. You are a human on earth. And so you have to do human things as well as being the beneficiary of magic and of divinity, but you still have to do your part so that you can get to the pyramids. Right? And most law of attraction or manifestation or motivational speakers kind of won't tell you that truth. I have stayed in resorts that were a dream 10 years ago, and I never could have imagined how I ever would have been able to justify affording staying in a resort like that. Right? But I have since stayed in them. I did have photographs of the destinations in my Positive Prime sessions. Some of you may or may not know that about 7 or 8 years ago, I reached out to Shawn Achor, S-H-A-W-N, Achor, A-C-H-O-R, and he had written The Happiness Advantage, and he had an outrageously successful TED Talk. And I knew if I showed him Positive Prime, that he would understand what it is that I had created, what I'd invented. And so I flew to Las Vegas and I had a really amazing conversation with him. I then flew to his home in Texas and we ended up, doing a great piece of work that involved Positive Prime sessions inside the Oprah Winfrey Network's Science of Happiness course that Oprah created with Shawn. That's a whole nother story. The point is, I had uploaded photographs of Shawn Achor and his wife into my Positive Prime session. So the fact is I also uploaded a photograph of Richard Branson. Who else can I tell you? Roger Federer. I have actually met Richard Branson, bizarrely enough. I actually ran into him. He actually owns a little baby island very near to where I live. And he touched down in a helicopter and he was walking to his chauffeur. And this is so unusual for Australia because we don't really do celebrity. Most Australians aren't really interested in the celebrity, US style celebrity blah, right? In fact, we kind of shun it. We think it's ridiculous. But I was with my niece and he's a very tall man with very broad shoulders. And I said to Lucy, that's Richard Branson, right? But I would actually like to have a decent conversation with him and do a piece of work with him. I haven't removed him from my Positive Prime sessions. And I'll tell you, this year I'm closer than I was last year. And next year I'll be even closer. The truth is the universe will align, or the divine will align me and the resources, the circumstances and the situations when I'm ready, when I've done the work. It will happen. And so I would actually say to you, what does success mean? Does it mean that you get to work with people like Shawn Achor? Because that's what it means to me. It means that I actually get to spend my precious time with amazing people who are actually world-class and they're achieving something extraordinary and they're contributing way beyond themselves in a global scene, not just in a local or a state or a national. The work is in you feeling the emotions about what success means to you and then finding the visual representation of that. So I'm going to actually show this to you. Who's ready for me to screen share? This is actually amazing. So I'm in my gallery, and as you can see, I have 9,424 photos. Do you see that? That's a lot of photos. Would you say I'm doing the work on manifesting, on getting clear on what it is that I want and need and desire? Right? This is evidence. The results always are indicated in something that's measurable. There's 9,424 photos I have uploaded. Now, here is the most incredible thing. I uploaded a photograph of me in front of the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. I actually lived in Paris for 6 months, over 20 years ago. And what this photo actually represents to me is that as a teenager, I had this crazy dream that I would live in Paris and I would learn French. And I actually did, with a name like Sarafini. I thought it'd be like Armani or Gucci, and I thought that I would be a fashion designer. I'm not joking. Like, if people said to me when I was 12, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's like, oh, I want to be a famous fashion designer. The fact that I can't sew and I can't draw, and I, am not actually, native to Italy, by the by, but I did end up in Paris. So when I see that photo, it triggers my other than consciousness, which is my super consciousness, my unconsciousness, and my subconsciousness, and my consciousness, all of the consciousnesses. It triggers me and reminds me that having dreams is worthwhile. So I would go back and look for photographs. This is me at 23. I'm 49 now. If you go down here, this is a photograph of me graduating from business school. I have this photo in here to remind my various consciousnesses that when I commit to something and I set out to achieve something, I actually accomplish it. Was I at the top of my class? Absolutely not. I was way too much of a party girl. I was involved in way too many extracurricular activities to ever be at the top of my class, right? And I'm smart. So I could have been, but quite frankly, there's a lot of other things in life than me studying like a nerd, even though I am nerdy and geekish, right? But here is a photo, and I'm actually going to blow it up so that you can see. See how it has Oprah and Ariana Huffington in it? And see how they're the only two in color? Audrey Hepburn, Amelia Earhart, of course, Princess Diana. Now, what's interesting is, and then Ms. Gandhi. So here's what's interesting. My very first Skype meeting with Sean Acor, he was in Ariana Huffington's penthouse in New York doing a Thrive video with Oprah. And he and Kobe Bryant were in Ariana's place because that's where they were filming. Now, what's amazing is that this image I actually found somewhere online, and I right-clicked it and I saved it. And I love these women as role models. I actually read a beautiful biography about Amelia Earhart, and where she crashed into the Pacific Ocean is not far from where I was born in Papua New Guinea. So I actually found her story fascinating, personally fascinating. I lived in London when Princess Diana died, and I remember going to Buckingham Palace upon that news and there being tens of thousands of bouquets of flowers in front of the palace. It was, and London was silent. It was very eerie. It was very strange. It was quite extraordinary. Anyway, if these images are flashing past, do you think that the divine somehow organized or orchestrated that I, Kim Sarafini, would connect with Sean Acor at the time when those two women are in the same place with him? And for any one of us to feel like we are the masters, that's just ridiculous, because it was the divine that's masterful. Your job is to get clear about what it is that you want to experience and who it is that you want to play with and so forth. This is actually a photograph of a Porsche Cayenne. I used to drive one. I have some different desires now. What does this photograph remind me is that I get to drive fancy cars if I choose to. This is a photograph of me and Marcy Shimoff. I feel forever grateful that I got to work with Marcy Shimoff. I was one of her #1 affiliates for her program called Happy for No Reason and then Love for No Reason. I was one of her love ambassadors. So I went through her certification programs. And this is about 10 years ago now, 10, 12 years ago. So this is me with her at her home, right? So the reality is I'm just going to go to a number 10 here. I have so many different photographs. I'll give you an example. This is Alain Ducasse. He is a Michelin star chef. And if I have a photograph of him, it's interesting because I was actually chosen to speak on a stage where he was one of the other speakers, which is actually why I went and got the photographs of him, because I didn't know very much about him. But given that he was going to be at the same event, I just thought I'm going to put his energy in my Positive Prime sessions, and I'm going to align to that. But there's, I knew I was going to be staying at a particular hotel when I was meeting him. And this is actually a room in that hotel. And so what I'm doing is I'm priming myself for being in these environments. And when I look at this photo, what I want you to do when you're looking at Positive Prime is I want you to imagine what it will feel like for you to be inside the situations that you're actually depicting. That is actually where the magic is. The more that you can feel the feelings of what you would feel like if you were there sitting in this chair or smelling this rose, is the more quickly it will manifest for you. So I hope that's given you a couple of ideas. I did say to someone yesterday, one of the best things that you can do is take photographs of the gifts that you're given. And I know that you know this, Linda. I was actually just recently at an event where I was gifted this angel. And it was so funny because one of the speakers was giving away a gift. And of course, it was the only gift given away that day. And of course, I got it. Why? Because guess what? I am aligned with gifts. I'm energetically aligned with gifts. It's beautiful, isn't it? So what would the best thing for me to be? What would I have to do? Anyone know? Photograph this and put it in my positive prime session that will remind my other than consciousness that I'm aligned with receiving gifts. Any one of us who has any problems with receiving needs to put photographs of what we've received into positive prime sessions. Yeah. That might mean you have a photograph of you receiving a hug as a child. It might be a photograph of you receiving, and I could go on and on and on. What are some of the other ideas that you've got?
So out of curiosity, was that it was an
you
angel?
Found me through Sean Acor. Is that not just incredible? Have you ever heard me tell that story of how I actually met him? Oh, you have heard me tell that story? Okay, you can unmute yourself if you like.
I have a comment.
Hi.
That was an angel, right?
I actually started in Oprah's first Thrive session many moons ago. And so, you know, Ariana Huffington was in the, and then there were several people, but Sean, I was blown away, just blown away. Him and Bobo.
Yeah, Bobo, his brother-in-law, Dr. Bobo.
Actually, Bobo and I, in Facebook, messaged each other because I had a number of questions for him, because he was in a positive, like he would go into where they had lunch and he would be like talking to people, and where I was, it was like nobody would talk to each other, and there was not anything I ever experienced before. Every place I ever worked before, people were chatty, you know, and so I don't know. And I said, I don't know how to break through this. So I kept following Sean, and then that got me to you.
Wow. What a blessing. What a blessing indeed. Well, it was Sean who actually did our very first piece of research that proved that we are positively primed inside 3 minutes by watching a positive prime session. It is because of the formula. And he did that research because he had to for the Oprah Winfrey Network. It has taken me more than 5 years to find a reputable, fine academic institution like the University of Technology, Sydney, to actually do the research that follows on from that with eye tracking and EEG and skin conductance and skin temperature. That has been really what we've been doing over the last couple of months, that proves that your brain goes into the flow state. So there's synchronization when you view a positive prime session. So it's fascinating how our lives unfold in ways we least expect, and who makes the greatest contribution to our lives. I was saying this to this woman I worked with 20 years ago at the Four Seasons, and I said, you know, if it wasn't for her, there is absolutely no way that I would have taken all of the thousands and thousands of steps necessary that Positive Prime would exist today.
That's great.
You know?
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Getting clear on what it is that you want is really important. What's more important, though, is the why. Right. Not all of us want tens of millions of dollars. Not all of us want even millions of dollars. Some of us actually want more peace and serenity and tranquility. Some of us want less to do, not more to do. And so the work that we do as spiritual beings in human bodies is deciding for ourselves, what is it that we want to contribute? How do we want to play life with this very precious thing that we have called life? It's your life. You get to live it every day.
And I feel particularly, I'm 66 and retired, and you know, I'm doing some of the things I want, and some things I don't want so much, but I constantly feel this pressure, you know, and then I lost 3 years in COVID, you know, indoors all the time. And I feel like I have to catch up and have to catch up, and it's like a wild circle.
Okay, I love that you are sharing that. It's of such beautiful value to everybody who's listening. One of the things that I would like you to do is watch a session called Calm Down, Relax, and Let Go. Calm down, relax, and let go. Right? There's another session called Surrendering and Letting Go. So let me just, I'm going to guide you with the screen share. So let's go back here. So I heard something there, and I would love to help you reframe it. Having just been in Bali, and that particular Indonesia decided that Bali, one of its islands, was going to be closed. The airport, they literally just closed it down. And the whole of Bali actually operates on tourism. And so all of the local people there, their livelihoods were devastated beyond what any one of us in the Western world could possibly comprehend. And so these people who made money as jobs working in resorts or in all sorts of other tourist operations, they had to go home to their villages and literally do subsistence living because there was no money, right? And the government didn't bail them out and didn't give them loans. They had no money. They went back to subsistence living. And in most cases, this actually impacted millions of people, Balinese people who are of the Hindu faith in Bali on the island. And one of the things is that I don't think, even with that devastation, that they would think that they lost 2 to 3 years. They too, it's really interesting, they too had schools that were completely shut down. And so this particular country that hardly even has electricity, right, in these rural areas and on these islands, had children going to school via Zoom. Let's just think about that in terms of technologically advancing an entire society as rapidly as that, right? So anyway, surrendering and letting go is a session. I think that what they did was they reframed it so that they could feel more comfortable with it. And I think that they thought it was Mother Earth creating an opportunity for all of us to retreat so that we could be rejuvenated, so that we could actually emerge stronger, happier, more vibrant, more healthful, and more grateful for our freedoms. And more grateful for the simple thing of our jobs. So Bali's only been reopened for the last 3 or 4 months. In all of the places that we visited, the staff, mostly locals, were so grateful that we were there. They were so incredibly grateful to have their jobs back. They were so incredibly grateful, feeling blessed that there were people to serve, that there were people for them to share their culture with. And so what I'm going to ask that you do, Anne, is that maybe over the next week, 2, 3, 4, I want you to go outside and I want you to feel the sunlight on your skin or the wind in your hair. I want you to feel this gentle breeze on your skin. I want you to become so hyper aware so that you actually transmute the energy into this, oh, wow, I feel so blessed with this freedom. And the more we can do that, the more we invite the opening. There is actually also a fantastic super mix called Emotional Healing, and that actually does integrate several sessions and mixes and merges them into one. I believe all of us have been hurt by COVID. All of us. We are living in a collective energy. The Balinese people's pain that was in the quantum field, we all felt it. Whether we actually will acknowledge it, whether we appreciate it, whether we're aware of that, whether we can even know that, the truth is that we were all impacted by it. And your pain everybody's pain around the world, we were all hurt by the way we all reacted to COVID. And particularly in places like Melbourne, where they had the longest shutdown in the world in a major city. So I think all of us need to do some healing. All of us. I often say that, particularly with clients that I help who are going through divorces can be very messy situations. The most important work to do initially is on forgiving yourself for finding yourself in that position. And if there is no true forgiveness, there can be no complete healing. And we often are led to believe by our society that it's forgiveness of the other who has wronged us. No, you heard it from me first in case you haven't heard it before. The forgiveness is of yourself for finding yourself in a situation that you wish that you weren't in. And when you can feel at peace and you can allow yourself having made mistakes, you will allow others to make mistakes too. And that will just help you in living a more joyful life where there's more compassion. There's more compassion for yourself. And as you're more compassionate towards yourself, you'll find you're more compassionate towards others. And you'll also find that others are more compassionate towards you. That's the art of living. It's one of the things that I learned on this journey of training thousands of therapists and healers. It's one of the things that I definitely understood. So back to the original story I was telling you, when I had my first near-death experience, it was so blissful. I have to tell you, it was so blissful. It was so beautiful. It was so wonderful. I did not want to come back. It's not that I don't love Cameron or my parents or my nieces and nephews, but I'm telling you, it was beautiful. I did not want to come back. Life as a human on this planet, sometimes it's really hard and shitty, right? I did not want to come back. But I got a very clear message and I was told I must come back. It's my duty to make sure that positive prime absolutely is used by the world, and I had to continue working on this technology. See, I hadn't scientifically proven it at that stage. I didn't have a whole heap of people involved in an elite program who were going to help to bring to life the positive prime that is required for the world next year and the year later. The positive prime that will exist in 1 year or 2 years won't even be close to the positive prime that it is today. Anyway, I was told I had no choice. I must come back and help to heal the world and help to bring about peace within ourselves, for each other, for the planet, for our environment. And that positive prime sessions are one of the ways to facilitate that. So here I am. It's beyond, it's Dharma. Here I am. Okay, so yeah, Linda, families ate dinners together again. A lot of good came from it. I'll tell you what also was pretty interesting is my niece, who I was away with in Bali, she was school captain last year, which of course is a great honor. And she said that as they were all on Zoom, what would happen is that the kids who were in trouble wouldn't have mute on Zoom, and their classmates heard the abuse in the background, the parents screaming at each other, they witnessed the alcoholism, they saw the violence, but it was collectively as a group, as a class, as a whole supportive number of people witnessed, that then came the, oh wow, how do we help this person, etc., etc. And I must admit, Lucy told me quite a number of stories that just broke my heart and shocked me to my core, that there are children that suffer in these kinds of ways. And were there not Zoom classes and children able to keep their mute button unmuted, no one would know. That's just a massive wow. So I think that there's a lot of work for all of us to do just to be kind to ourselves today and kind just to the people around us and create that ripple effect. And I often think sometimes we feel like we have to impact thousands and thousands of people, or tens of thousands of people, or hundreds of thousands of people, or millions of people. And that's probably true of someone like me with Positive Prime. But actually the greater truth is I just have to be really kind to me today and kind to the people around me. And in being that, I create a ripple effect. I put this energy into the quantum field and I help to heal the planet just because we exist in the divine. Thank you so very much for being with us. Usually this conversation or coaching is, and whatever's coming through me, is about 30 minutes every week. And sometimes there are other hosts like me and other Positive Prime leaders who are great healers and coaches. So I invite you to come back next week if you'd like, or the week there, or the week after that, or the week after that. Unless I'm on vacation, I'll be here.
This is my first time being in one of these. Is it once a week?
Yes, once a week.
Okay.
I do this group work. I mean, every other day I do lots of individual work, and I do lots of, being Positive Prime CEO work, but I have never divorced myself from the actual individual healing work that I do, because that's actually how I keep alive these gifts and develop them. Yeah, every week's super different as well. So come back next week or the week after. I'm so glad that you have come this time. Bye-bye, everyone. See you next week. Ciao.